Hello, everyone. Welcome to the best and worst of Walt Disney World, brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel and DisBoards.com. I am your host, Ryan O'Clavin, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the top 5 things to avoid at Walt Disney World if you have a fear of heights. Now, to help me with this conversation, at the table, we've got Mr. Corey Fiescanaro.
Hey there.
Ms. Morgan Lamone.
Hi.
And Mr. Craig Williams in the back there.
Ahoy, ahoy.
So this episode, like I said, top 5 things to avoid if you have a fear of heights. We went through a thread on Disboards. If you haven't been over to disboards.com, you can check that out. It's a great travel planning site over there. Ding. Morgan found a thread that was all about heights, so we kind of went through all the attractions that were listed in there, and then we came up with this list, and then we have 2 sections to talk about. One is we decided before the show that we're just going to call it the obvious to avoid attractions. Now, I'm just going to kind of run through those because we all kind of agreed on these. Over at one of the water parks, I can't remember right now, Blizzard Beach, I believe,
Yes.
Summit Plummet, over there. It's terrifying. Don't go on it. It's so high up, and I know I said I was going to just run through this, but I was forced to do it once, and I'm terrified of heights, and it was a nightmare. So don't do that. Skyliner, you might want to avoid. Astro Orbiter, or any... I find that I get nervous on any hub and spoke kind of spinner rides, Triceratops Spin, the Magic Carpets at Magic Kingdom, Dumbo, and in Disneyland, I know this is Walt Disney World, the Astro Orbiter out there, I sometimes think I'm all the way at the top because that's as much as my body will humanly let me get to, and I have to like push the lever all the way up with my foot, and no one can look at me while I'm doing it. So, and then Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse. I remember being a kid and getting like a little bit up this this thing. I used to love this movie, so I'm like, I want to go in the treehouse, and I'd get up there and be like, no.
Yeah.
Bring out the ladders and firemen because you're going to have to drag me off this ride. But now we have a little bit, a list of some more attractions to kind of go over, and these ones might not be super obvious. We'll start with one that's kind of teetering on the obvious side of things, and that would be Slinky Dog Dash over in Toy Story Land at Disney's Hollywood Studios. How do we feel about this? Craig is not afraid of anything. Craig, can you tell us what you said you come to terms with before you go on any attraction?
So within my time of working at theme parks, the one thing I think you learn is that at any point in time there can be an accident on them, and while you
Glowing
should
endorsement.
While
of
it
theme
is
parks.
good, no, it is good to trust, Disney, Universal, the other fine folks out there running amusement parks, but at the same time too, you are moving on things that really they follow the physics of the world, but at the end of the day, they are all death traps, and anything can happen. So anytime I get on an attraction, I assume that the worst is going to happen, and therefore I don't fear it. I'm not going to say what the worst is, but I think you can figure it out without being blatant about it and scaring people too much. But I've lost my fear of attractions for that reason. It's, whatever happens, happens. At least I'll have fun.
Well, basically, I feel like what you've said is thrill rides are puzzles designed by Jigsaw from the movie Saw that are meant to be survived with less cutting, I guess.
I
but
like that.
just in the line. But yeah, I mean, he is not wrong. I guess technically we are creating these, especially thrill attractions or attractions where they're like, what can make you feel like you're dying, but then also you live, So that is a scary. I mean, I struggled with attractions when I was a kid, and a big part of that was heights for me. So
I don't have a fear of heights, but I think now I'm going to think about maybe developing one. But I mean, I do have, a fear of getting sick, fear of getting nauseous, stuff like that.
oh, don't
motion
worry,
sickness.
we'll do a motion sickness one.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's a lot that I'd have to say about that. But as far as Slinky Dog's concerned with heights, I can definitely see it because it's an outdoor coaster.
It's wide open.
Exactly.
Wide open, I think that's part of it. Where I find that we'll do another list of things that we think people perceive to be scary because of heights, and we don't feel like they are. But like Slinky Dog, I think because it's not enclosed and it's just this one like rail.
Yeah.
And there are parts where you're pretty low to the ground, but like there's also parts where you're like toward the back where like alien swirling saucers is, and like you can like look around and see like all
Over
of
that
Batu
fence,
and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, that you like
Right.
you're like I'm up here and I can see Florida's a pretty flat land. I can see a lot of the land around me.
Just remember, most people don't have a fear of heights. They have a fear of falling from heights.
You know what? I learned that on Tower of Terror. That's why I was like, I have a different fear that I'm unaware of. And working at Lights Motors Action, which
Yes, I was going to say the article that I found was 10 years old, and one of the top things everybody kept saying in the comments was the stadium seating at Lights Motors Action.
Yes.
And Rhinos worked there.
Oh, yes, yeah. And I remember day one when they're like, we're going to walk you across the top. And I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I will not be walking across this. Because you could, the higher up you get, the more I can feel everything in the universe. I have the force, the higher up in the atmosphere I get. And I'm like, nobody
you a
look at me,
Jedi?
nobody touch me.
Are you
in
a
the
Jedi
sky
Knight?
I am. Yeah.
I know it's not on our list, so I don't want to go off trail too much, but has anybody ever thought when you're at the top of Spaceship Earth and like you look down at like kind of the scaffolding, you thought of like, what would it be like to fall from the top of Spaceship Earth?
My
I
friend,
have-
that is literally the definition of a fear of heights.
No, I have thought about that, though. Like, I'm not just in, like, passing, like, wonder. But I'm not afraid of it.
I didn't know that
Just-
you. What part of the attraction are you talking about where you can see that all? Like right before you go back down?
Right before you turn around and go back down.
I guess I'm not wondering. I'm not looking around. For me, you guys have just ruined that attraction. I thought I was basically in like a living room setting, like floor all around me. Not like, I could hop out right now and just walk down a flight of stairs somewhere.
Yeah, there's like scaffolding and stuff, and you can look down and see all the.
I should have added it on this list then. Another terrifying
Now I'm
ride
gonna look
here at
for
Walt
it.
Disney World. But another one we have on this list. This list isn't really in particular order, just general order, but is Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom. Now, I do want to say, like for me personally, I have trouble with the lift. Like when you're going up, the click, 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 like, and that once you go through that first archway and you can kind of, people are like, look around, and I'm like, how I can't move, all my muscles are frozen, and it lasts for maybe, I don't know, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
10.
And you're just like, if you just kind of look straight ahead, or even, I know some people are like, oh, well, just look down at your knees or something. But I'm like, no, because then my peripheral vision works still. So I just focus and know that once you're in the mountain, there's no real other part where you're like, unless you're in the front row, there's no other part where you're really aware of being like, I'm really high up in the air. You'll remember you are, but.
Do you have when you turn that corner and you see the track before you go backwards, does that scare you at all?
If
or like,
I'm in the
you can
front car,
see like
yeah.
Epcot and
Oh, it's
everything.
horrible. If you're in that front car, it is terrifying.
Yeah.
It is like, especially because like you kind of glide to a stop, but then there's that one last like bump forward. Like it literally, you think you're almost done stopping, and then it bumps forward.
Then you hear the
at that
hydraulics
part where I'm
behind
like,
you.
Someday this car's going over, and I'm in it. Like
Yeah.
so I'm always like, when people are like sit in the front row, and I'm like, I'll sit in the back row.
Everest is one of those attractions that I kind of need to prepare myself for. Like if I'm just in Animal Kingdom for the day on a whim, I'm not going to just be like, yeah, let's hop on Expedition Everest. Like I need to have that fast pass booked 2 weeks in advance and know
You'll second guess yourself. If
I'm
you're-
going
Oh,
on
okay.
Expedition Everest in 2 weeks and I need to be ready for it. Yeah, I can't go on unless I'm ready
Because
for
I guess
it.
I'm like Craig. I'm like, oh, single rider line looks short. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Like, no ride bothers me. I think like carnival rides at the fair that were set up overnight.
Oh, yeah.
That scares me because like all the rickety and stuff.
Oh
but,
yeah, that's
yeah.
talk about a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Look for our another best and worst jigsaw puzzles of the Saw franchise. One of those will be the fairs set up in any sort of field. I on an Expedition Everest note, I actually struggle with the backwards part. I know this is a little more. It's I had a concussion when I was a kid, and I think my brain is just shaking around in my head way too much these days.
Is it all? Is it,
So I don't think you can hear it in the
So
show,
maybe,
but there is a dog behind us somewhere. But anyway, well, I think that's some of that's motion sickness too.
Yeah.
So we also on this list, and this was a kind of an interesting one, but multiple people in this room brought it up, and I don't know if it was. I believe it was in the thread as well.
or actually, no, it wasn't because it was such an old thread that this ride wasn't there. So we were
Okay.
kind of trying to determine if this counts as like a simulated height or an actual height.
But Craig did bring up a good point, and that is so it's Flight of Passage in Pandora, the world of Avatar at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and there's like two caveats to this. There's the idea that you are being presented with this simulated height, You know that
Yeah.
you know there's a lot of, I mean, you're literally flying on the back of a Banshee, so you're like mountains and caverns and all this stuff, and there's one part where you take a seat and you're kind of like looking over, and and so
Tilts forward
if you get
and
really
leans.
into it, for me, I'm like, this is clearly a cartoon I'm watching. So, but if you're really into it, that might be something for you. But what happens to me a lot on the attraction is, I find that I'm never in the middle. I'm always on the side. And my number one like kind of complaint with this attraction is, I wish they had just like right on the edge of the glass right here, the glasses on either side as they bend around your eye. If they had just kind of put a little Ted Mosby, I don't know if you remember that episode of How You Met Your
Yes.
Mother where he's afraid to watch the Super Bowl results, so he
Yes.
makes that device. Like a little bit of that right here could change
Yeah.
the attraction. Just even a mirror so it reflects the screen or something.
Yeah.
Heck, if you make the accident of looking backwards and you watch your platform moving up and down, which
Yes.
is really freaking cool. If you're not afraid of stuff, I would recommend it one time. But when you see how far up and down you drop,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that could also start.
Yeah.
Because guessing for people who are fearful of that, their idea is going to be, if it starts dropping and it doesn't stop, how far am I going to drop?
Forever.
Yeah.
Into
well, yeah.
the pits of Satan himself.
Well, into the portals. Yeah. So
I'd say you move probably up and down maybe like 6 feet. I think is probably the
Jesus,
most.
That's a
more than I
lot.
would even have thought. Yeah.
And it looks like a lot. And 6 feet might be a little too generous, maybe like 5, but it's not a lot of a drop, but it looks like that if you look behind and
it's
compare
also
it to the wall.
it's also the speed it's moving at, because you really are like
Yeah.
going very quickly with
and
it.
if Craig said before the show, he made a good point that if you're on the edge, like I'm talking about, it's 2 floors.
Three.
Three floors of people that you don't really know that you've kind of traveled up that high or that low or whatever. So when you get in, you kind of don't really actually know where you are in terms of that. Like maybe if you've done the attraction a ton of times, you have that perception. But like I've
didn't
been on the
even-
top floor, and when I can see out of my peripherals, I hate when I can see another floor below me, because that's the part where I'm like, ugh. It's not even a fear of myself falling. It's a
Yeah.
fear of somebody else falling. Like I have this, it's a weird chemical starts shooting off in my brain that causes my body to tense up. But then also like I'm fearful of what could happen to other people, and like Walt Disney World is full of dum-dums sometimes. And so you never know when somebody's gonna be like, I'm done with this ride, and try and get off, and you'll be like, whoa, and you'll watch them fall. And I don't want that to ever happen. So but so that's one maybe to keep in mind there. But also Soarin' at Epcot, Soarin' around the world.
Yeah, because it's not 100%. I mean, it's simulated, but you're still
You're actually
physically
high up in that room.
You were
Yeah.
actually going up really
When-
high. Yeah.
Little quick story. Back when my family and I first went on it, I think the first year it opened, my younger brother was like 7 years old at the time. And he's like, oh, we're not up that high. We're in the seat on the ride, and he leans forward, and my parents like mom bar him and are like, no, you're like 30 feet up in the air. Don't do that. Like
Yeah.
you could fall and die. And he was like, oh.
Well, because they like the 3 levels lift up, and they not only are you just like over the floor, but there's that part where if you watch when you're getting into your seat in the room, the loading area, you can see there's this like fence right in front of the screen, and you're actually dangling above that area that
Yeah.
even goes down even further, because
Yep.
it's the dome like IMAX screen that they use in there.
But
Um,
on the thread, it did have a really good point that if you do want to try it, but you are afraid of heights, ask to be in the bottom row.
Yeah, definitely.
And that should help you. And then also in the, what's it called? Instruction or safety briefing, it shows like a little video of the ride kind of going up. So you kind of get an idea before you get on. So it'd be like, oh, that's too much, or, oh, that's fine. I can handle that.
It is both the motion of the swinging up when you're going forward that it is cool, because it does feel like kind of like a swing set or something, like I guess I would describe it as. But then there are parts where like the fighter jets come by, and the whatever you're sitting
kicks
in your
back.
seat,
Yeah,
it
like
sweeps
reacts
back.
to it,
And
yeah.
also, if you get some jerk kid or jerk adult, excuse me, I don't mean to alienate or just to point out children on this, but adults like swinging their feet, being like, I'm going to be funny and make this move. I want to be
Yeah,
like, I'm going to chop your legs off when
Yeah.
we're done here. From this.
Wait. I wasn't paying attention. Did you try to say that the fighter jets are still in there?
No. Well, the last time I've ridden it was when it was the classic one at
California Adventure.
California.
Gotcha.
So
Okay,
that's
sorry.
for me. That's the part I
Yeah.
still am fearful of that part, even though it's not in.
I just had to
it's not
double
in
check.
ours.
That was
Yeah.
my fault for not paying
No.
attention to you.
But the new one, don't the fireworks shoot right up at you? in the room?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you do kick back with the firework part.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not afraid of heights, but sitting in the seat and it's just a little thin piece of fabric, it feels like it's obviously secure enough, but it makes me nervous because I'm like, if that were to rip or snap, I'm just out of there. That freaks me out.
And
a little bit.
kind of tilt off topic a little bit, Soarin is an awesome ride, and it's definitely a family-friendly ride too, but the height part, you are very high. But don't let that dissuade you if you're not afraid of heights of going on it, because it's an awesome
Yeah.
attraction.
Oh, definitely.
So the last one on our list here, that when I was a child, I liked going on it, but I was still very nervous. And as an adult, my fears have been realized, though, is the monorail. I was always afraid, it doesn't really look that high up, because when you walk, when you come up to the TTC out of the parking lot, you are walking up this ramp, and you walk under the rails for the monorail, and they're close enough that you're like, oh, if my parents put me on their shoulder, not now, obviously, as a 35-year-old, but when you were a kid, you'd think I could almost touch the bottom of this, but when you take off and you head toward the Magic Kingdom, once you get around kind of the contemporary area,
Yep.
or as you're going into Magic Kingdom, or even if you're riding the monorail from Epcot to the TTC, that part goes really high up. And I used to be I have to be in the center of this. I don't want to look down. I'm afraid the doors are going to open, and then lo and behold, years later, the doors are wide open while they're driving.
And especially for people from Massachusetts or New York, when you think of the monorail, you think of something like our MBTA system or the subway, which are down low.
Yeah.
But it's not. You're going to go up high. You're going to be up pretty high, and you're going to be able to see down, quite a bit.
That's one for me. This is terrible to say, but this is one for me where I always feel like at any moment the cars are going to tilt from side to side on the track, and one's just going to be boop. And
The Disneyland monorail does that really bad.
Oh, fun.
It makes you nervous when you hit that corner and then it's a heavy and it starts to tilt. I'm like, we're gonna die.
And I'm sorry, but aside from this being, a Fair Heights thing, the monorail doesn't smell great. It's over the years has developed a smell of socks that they need to refurb that. But on the other token, they're very rare, but there's been instances where the doors have opened, and on really busy days, you pack into that monorail.
You're like, I can't back up.
Yeah,
So what happens?
Just imagine it stopping and a door opening with a packed car. Ugh.
I get so nervous. When I was there on New Year's and after the fireworks, everybody's trying to leave. The power went out just a couple feet out of the station. And when it stops, that's when I get nervous. And I'm just the doors could open, or we're just hanging out here and don't know how long, don't want to do
if you weren't afraid before this list, we hope you're afraid now. No, we do hope that this that is our list that we came up with the help of Disboards. That was the monorail, Soarin', Flight of Passage, Expedition Everest, Slinky Dog Dash, and then we had the list of the obvious attractions that you can kind of see for yourself when you're out there, where you're like, I don't like heights, I will not enjoy this. Astro Orbiter is a bigger nightmare than it looks like, because it feels like it tilts and you're going to fall out of it. And I've made a mistake of going on it before, but whatever. We hope that this list could help you plan a better vacation, like the experts over at Dreams Unlimited Travel. So if you are thinking about, coming to Walt Disney World, and you can let the experts over there help you plan this vacation. It's a free service, if you will, where it's basically concierge travel agents that are going to help you give you information like this, little insider tips and all that fun stuff, and help you out any way they can. So be sure to check them out. They are a sponsor of this wonderful program that you have all helped me create here today. Whether it was great, only time will tell. So thank you, everybody, for having this conversation. Thank you, everyone out there, for watching and listening. And we will be back for another episode in the future of the best and worst of Walt Disney World. Thank you, everyone.